Thank you for joining us today. Before we start, I'm going to give a couple housekeeping items. First, this webinar is being recorded. Registrants will receive a link to the replay and the handouts later this week. We will also be posting a link to the replay and the handouts via social media and our website. Thank you again for joining us, and if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A component of the webinar dashboard at any time, and we'll address as many questions as we can at the end of today's webinar.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the webinar, How to Have a Career You Love. Cara and I are the chair and vice chair of the ABA Young Lawyers Law Practice Committee. Joining us today are Traci and Rachelle Canter. Traci is an attorney and the executive director at Barran Liebman, Oregon's premier employment defense firm. She guides and implements the firm's management, marketing, recruitment, attorney development, technology, finances, and administration. Traci is also the immediate past chair of the ABA's Law Practice Division and a member of the ABA House of Delegates.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cara Murphy, and I have the pleasure of introducing Rachelle Canter. Rachelle Canter is president of RJC Associates and has helped hundreds of attorneys make successful career moves. She wrote a career guide for attorneys and executives make the right career move and was one of 3 coaches featured in an ABA Journal cover story. Shelley earned her PhD in social personality psychology from the University of Colorado and is a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Stanford University with a BA in psychology.
Thank you. This program today focuses on 3 tools for career success. 1, creating a successful career plan. 2, resume drafting. And 3, networking. The first thing we'll cover today is how to create a successful and effective career plan. Give me next one, please.
And are we going to the next? Okay, there. All right. Many of you, I guess I want to start out by saying that having a career you love is both an important and an achievable goal. We're going to spend time on 3 tools to help you have that career. And the first is a career plan, which is just a simple roadmap to help you define and pursue your career goals. I think it's important to remember that your career happiness is your top priority, but no one else's. So this is a simple way to keep you focused on making progress with small steps toward your goal, including how to measure them and how to remind yourself to take them. I want to turn this over to Cara and Chris so they can focus on some practical questions. I'm happy to address anything with you.
So how detailed should your career plan be?
My personal feeling is that a career plan can be 3 lines, literally, like what is your long-term career goal? How do you plan to increase your skills and marketability in the next year? And how do you plan to increase your skills and marketability in the next 3 or 5 years? Those 3 lines are enough to be a successful career plan. And by the way, I've actually, in one presentation I was making to the Philadelphia Bar, I actually just stopped and said, take out your pens. And I gave people 3 minutes to come up with their career plan, just to show them how simple it can be to be effective.
I'll jump in too. So I think a career plan should be quite detailed, but I think it should have a lot of bullet points. So first of all, I want to just say thank you for having us today. And Shelley is super, super on target as far as I'm concerned. Happiness is really, really important when you're building out your career. So I get the opportunity, it's really fantastic, to meet with every attorney in our office monthly, and we go over their career plan, their marketing plan. And the first question I always ask is, are you happy? What's making you the happiest? And we build out the career plan from those ideas. So instead of trying to create happiness, We're saying what makes us happy and how do we continue that? So for instance, if litigation is making one of my attorneys really happy, but maybe investigations or advice work isn't making them as happy, we focus on how to get them more litigation. And there's internal marketing you can do and external marketing you can do to create that and to make sure that, you know, your bio is reflecting the things that you love per se. Like that's a really good way to get more work in something that you enjoy instead of talking, your bio talking and highlighting things that maybe you don't enjoy. But I like to keep it pretty detailed, but with very step-by-step goals on how you're going to get there. So the 1, 3, 5 year, I even do the 1, 3, 5 months. You know, what are we going to do each week? What are little things that we can do to help progress us towards our goals? And I think that it's really important to also plan for life. So we talk a lot about that. If things don't get covered before we meet the next month, we talk about why. And we talk about what we have coming up and how we can shift. The best thing about a career plan is that it's yours and it's a living document. And you can always update it. You can always change it. And that's another thing I like to talk to my colleagues about and my friends is the career plan is really just reflective of what you want it to be and where you want it to go. So there's really no failure. There's just an opportunity to always keep it moving forward and switching directions whenever you want to. And I love that flexibility.
I would just say, it sounds like you have a great system in your firm, Traci. But for many people, they don't have, anyone, an executive director or anyone else who's as engaged in their own career goals. And so my feeling is keep it simple so you can keep making progress. And so you can own it and you can build in a little more time when things require it, but you still have a way to measure that you're making progress, toward your goals.
Sure. I think that's a great point. And I think that it's also really nice, if you don't have someone internally that might be, really excited about holding you accountable all of the time, finding a good group of friends, your friends from across the country through the ABA or through your local bar, finding people that you can connect with once a month to share where you're going and how you're getting there. And it's really awesome to have this conversation out loud because it's a little hard to have it in a vacuum when it's just inside your head. And, we all have self-doubt and we don't feel, a lot of us that have become lawyers, we're pretty goal-oriented, right? And if we don't hit those goals on the timeline we projected, sometimes we get a little, bothered by that. It's really nice to have a sounding board of people. I mean, I do this for myself with, my mom and my husband, and it's really nice because it's also important to have buy-in from the people that are supporting you. So I don't just talk about my career plan with myself or with one person at work. I talk about it with the people that are supporting me. For instance, when I was the chair last year of the Law Practice Division, that was a huge chat with a lot of people before I accepted that role, right? Because it wasn't just something I was going to be doing on my free time on the side. So I think it's really great to have people invested in what you're doing and able to give you real-time feedback on what you may or may not be thinking about.
I think that's a great idea. I also think my advice is usually not to work on more than one small step at a time, because it's easy. The whole purpose of a career plan is not to set up unrealistic goals that you're going to fail, but instead to focus on one specific measurable thing you can do. Say, for example, that your long-term goal is to get an MA in taxation and be part of that practice. Well, in the next week or 2 weeks, you're not going to get an MA, but it may be that what one small measurable step would be to talk to one of the partners in your firm who has an MA, have a 10-minute conversation with them. That's a realistic thing that even in a busy career, most of us could probably find time to do. Or maybe if you can't do it in 2 weeks, maybe you give yourself 3 weeks. But coming up with small enough and measurable enough goals that you actually get that feeling of momentum, like, wow, I did this. You're not going to do it all at once, but as you take small steps toward your goal, it's very rewarding.
I love that idea. And what I love to do is actually put it on my calendar. So all those little tiny goals, I put it on my calendar, and as I reach them, I don't ever delete them from my calendar. I change the color of them. I'm very color coded on my Outlook calendar. but it gives me a sense of like, I did this. And then on the big goal, Shelly, because again, I'm a small goal and big goal kind of gal.
Yeah.
I make sure that I have a reward set up in place for that. So it's really hard to get your like continued momentum at times. But if there's something I know I really want to do or something that is really exciting, I'll pair that with reaching my goals. And I think that that's a really fun way to like celebrate the little goals in life. Because sometimes, like you said, you have a huge goal and it's going to take a long time to get there. And it's nice to reward yourself along the way. Like,
I absolutely second what Traci's saying. She's a good amateur psychologist because there literally is research evidence that shows that one of the most effective ways you can get people to do things that they don't really necessarily want to do is making something that they really want to do contingent on doing the hard thing. So rewarding yourself in that way. And also your calendar is one of your most effective change management tools in the world. Is just, you put on your calendar, maybe you want to talk to three people about different MA in taxation programs, or you want to talk to 4 different partners. Well, having 4 conversations in 1 week is probably more than anyone has time for. But if you have it on your calendar to do one every week or every 2 weeks or even every month, over time, you will make it without feeling like you failed.
I love that. And I think being intentional about it is so important. And we're lawyers, right? And time is money. So I love building it out in my calendar so that I don't feel like it's taking away from my billable work. So I build it in, if there's someone I want to talk to, like Shelly's saying about, the M&A practice, I build it into like a coffee date or something so that I'm already going to go get that coffee. And now I'm going to do it with the person that I wanted to talk to anyway. So I try to be strategic about my time and how I'm using it. And I think in addition to just putting it on the calendar, I love the notes section. I love keeping a history of where I am on this plan and who I'm talking to or what I'm doing or what were my thoughts 2 months ago and how have they changed. I think the notes section of my my calendar is almost like a dear diary at times, but it keeps you fresh and you can look back at it and see. I like to look at it too, like a year ago. What was I doing a year ago and how far have I come? It's nice to just see the progression, and it's nice to know what things worked and what things didn't work, right? I think it's just as important to know what didn't work so that we don't repeat that process again and again. So I really encourage people to use that note section so that there's a little look back. And then at the end of the year, when maybe you are taking a bigger look at where you spent your non-billable time and how it, progressed into career building or networking, it's important again to see like, was it worth my time? Did I get something out of it? So I really like using calendars and leaving them on the calendar. That's a huge one. A lot of people delete them. And I think it's important to leave it there so that you have that, just that history.
And Traci, that's a really good idea. And it raises the other issue, which is that you really want measurable goals, because if you don't, if it's just your intention to talk to partners or do more networking, I'm guessing that all of us are guilty of intending to do lots of things, but they never happen. And it's not for, you're in a demanding job. You've got crises on your hand. It's very easy for time to slip away. So a measurable goal means that you can find it's objective. Did it happen? Or did you take the step or not? If you took it, great. What's the next step? If you didn't, why didn't you? And it helps you in a very analytical way figure out what went wrong and what do I need to do next time. So again, you're learning from the issues. The other thing I'd like to say is I think it's really important to have a long-term goal. And like Traci says, all of this can change. Nothing is cast in stone. But I think if you're only looking at the long term, I would just caution people, because if you've got a 5-year goal, for example, 5 years is a long time away. So it's pretty easy to say, oh, I can't get to anything this month. I'll do better next month. It's just easier not to feel so accountable.
These are great tips. And I think we can now transition to kind of the next arena that we wanted to talk about, which was building your resume.
Okay, so the most, well, first I would say that I think a strong resume is your most invaluable career tool for finding and doing work you love. And the most important thing, bar none, is that a powerful resume depends on results, not responsibilities. So I have literally worked on hundreds and hundreds of resumes with attorneys and seen hundreds more. And usually what they are is responsibility oriented. So long description of the practice group, maybe stuff from your firm bio that describes the particular cases or deals you were on. But really, your power is in what have you done that has made a difference. And showing that you did things and you did them well is crucial to your ability to differentiate yourself from the competition. And that means quantifying the results as well. So you're probably saying, yeah, but I'm in my second year of practice. And that's fine. I've worked with many people in their first 3 years of practice. The whole idea is that if you're doing what most attorneys do, which is focusing on responsibilities, there is always going to be someone who went to a better law school than you did, had a higher class rank. Maybe you were on law review, but they were the editor. There's always going to be someone who was at a more prestigious firm. But that separates you from everyone else is, what did you do with those responsibilities? So for example, did you save time? Did you do a big document production in record time? Did you second share a case really early in your practice? Did you find a problem that actually saved a client money? There are all kinds of ways to quantify, but it's that way, showing what you've done in a quantified and specific way, that will really make the biggest difference. And one thing I want to point to is that keep a log. Something that I encourage everyone to do is have a document on your computer, and at the end of every week or at the end of every case or deal, take time to write in any quantified results. That information it's going to take you a minute to do it each week, but it will really pay off when you want to update your resume, when you're going into your annual performance review, when you're trying to argue for, a bigger compensation bump, or maybe the chance to do another kind of project that will help lead you in the direction of your long-term goal. So I've talked enough. Let me turn this over to Cara and Chris and their questions.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the first one. How often should you update your resume?
I think that's a great question. So internally, I try to update my resume at least once a week. To Shelly's point, everything that you do. So what I like to say is, did I do something today? Like, for instance, what we're doing today will go on our resumes, right, Shelly? Like, you're going to put that, like, we're speaking today, right? But every time we do something internally, I look to see, is that something that I should be adding? Is that back to the career plan? Is that a place I want to be going? Do I want to be developing that more? Do I want to be highlighting that for myself? And also back to Shelly's point of quantifying, brilliant, right? I'm super into that as well. Instead of saying, helped with, motion or whatever it is, it's like, wrote over, 24 motions or something like that. Anytime you can put in the word dozens, or you can say 20 plus or something, that's what she means by quantify. How many times did you do something? Because internally, right, law firms are looking for people that can hit the ground running and that they know how to bill and they know how to, do the work and get it done. So if you've done something repetitively, you probably know how to do it pretty well. So it's really a way to showcase that you just didn't do something once, you did it a lot. And updating your resume, especially if you're doing this on LinkedIn, right? Every time you update it, it's going to give people that update, then you're top of mind. If you have a website where you're updating your resume, it makes your website more Google happy, right? Every time you update something online, it's putting you back towards the top. So it's really important to keep this information fresh and updated, I think, as often as possible.
Now, I've got sort of a different perspective on this. I would keep that log so you've got, great regular weekly updates if you can. But actually updating your resume, if you don't have time to do that all the time, and I worry that people don't all have the energy and focus of Traci, that if you're doing it even once a year, or when you complete a particular case, for example, with a big accomplishment, maybe you were part of a 3-person team that got this great result for Amazon. That's worthy of an update in the moment. But if you even did it every year, or before an important thing like your performance review, I think that could also work. I just always worry about people having too much to do and they end up not doing it, and then they feel guilty and like they failed. And the whole purpose of these tools is to keep you supported and keep you engaged, but not make you feel bad.
Yeah, I really understand that perspective. I think where I'm coming from is I like to be ready at the drop of a dime for any opportunity. And to be ready for that, I don't have time. So this is what I see a lot. Someone has an opportunity at their front door and they just happen like all of a sudden. Sometimes you can be looking, and then all of a sudden someone says, okay, send me your resume. And then people like stop everything and they try to update it in a hurry. And it like really doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
There's like typos, they miss something. And so that's why I believe in updating it regularly, just because people are always asking for bios and they always want the most current, fresh information. But I see it as an investment in yourself, right? I mean, if you're going to do the work, it's kind of like billing. If you're going to do the work, you have to write it down and get paid for it. If you're going to do the work and you want it to be on your billboard, like your personal billboard is your resume, or your webpage or your LinkedIn or all of them, I just think it's nice to build it in. And it definitely, Shelley, you're right. It definitely takes time and energy and focus, but I would rather be prepared than be caught, a little bit flat-footed and have to all of a sudden get it ready really quickly. And then I just don't want to have any errors, because I think that's actually one of the least effective resumes is any errors. And unfortunately, everyone knows that, but when you're in a hurry and you don't have other people reviewing it. So what I like to do is update resumes pretty often, and then, get together with friends once in a while and just have people look at them. I actually do like different versions sometimes to see what speaks to people more. So one thing, especially if you're in like more of a beginning of your career, I still see younger or newer lawyers listing like their education first. And I don't understand that, because I would say you're not trying to get into another educational program, you're trying to get into a job. And so I would say put your experience up top. And so people sometimes challenge me on that, which is awesome. I love a good challenge. And I say, okay, take 2 resumes, put your education up top on one, put your experience up top on the other. Give it to some family friends, give it to some colleagues, and let them say which one they think is better for, whatever you're going after. And, 9 times out of 10, people come back and they're like, you were right. And I just think it's important, because when I look at resumes of people that want to be a part of our firm and it's listed with education first, that's great. But I'm like, wait, do you not have any legal experience? And that's exactly where my mind goes first, because I would think they would want to showcase that first. So I think it's important to put that.
Sorry, Traci. No, go ahead.
Go for it.
No,
Anyway.
Finish. I thought you were finished and I was going to jump in.
I'm good. Go ahead.
Even for people who just graduated from law school, you've still got things you did. I'm thinking of someone I worked with who was the son of a partner I worked with in a big firm. He hadn't been practicing law, but he'd done some stuff when he was in summer clerkships. And he also managed his fraternity house and did all this stuff, oversaw a big building project. Well, those are things that had quantified results that show a degree of leadership that other people couldn't necessarily lay claim to. So that can be very useful. And I think your point, Traci, about updating it often, one thing I will say is the kind of resume that I'm advocating takes time, because it takes time to think of how to quantify something and how to get it specific enough. And generally what I find is when I start working with them, I give them some samples of attorneys I've worked with, sort of similar, place in their careers. For example, I take the identifying information out and they say, oh yeah, well, but they had it, their job lent itself to quantification. And then I have to say, look, those people had the same reaction when we started out and I showed them other people's examples. So to Traci's point about you can't do it at the last minute, I think certainly when you're coming up with an accomplishment-oriented resume, it is going to take time. And then with the help of a log, you should be able to, it won't be as hard to slot in some newer, more recent, and maybe flashier accomplishments.
So speaking of accomplishments and experiences, when do you start removing old positions or old internships from your resume? And going to that point too, how long is too long? Because I know it's all over the board as if it should be one page or multiple pages are acceptable. So if you could touch base, that'd be great.
I have a really strong opinion on this. I think it shouldn't be more than 2 pages. And I have seen thousands of resumes, and I think a lot of people think more is more. I mean, if you can get your accomplishments, your job, a short job description, and your education, which I agree with Traci, ought to go to the bottom, on 1 page, fine. For most people, it's going to be 2 pages. But I think it's really important not to exceed 2, because if you can't make your case in 2 pages, I don't know anyone who wants to read 3 or will read 3 or 4. And believe me, I have seen 26-page resumes. I am not exaggerating. So I think 2 pages, no more.
Yeah, I think that's a really good. Yeah, I mean, I'm actually more even of a 1-pager. I mean, the likelihood of someone flipping the page, like if you're gonna have more than 1 page, the first page better be an attention grabber, because I'm probably only looking really at the first page when it's going around. So to your question, Cara, I think it's important, you start removing old positions when your resume is becoming too long, right? So when you have something new to add, it should usually take the place of something. Now, it's a little bit different because if you're talking about a resume like internally, my resume is very long because it has every presentation I've ever done and things like that. But the resume I'm sending out to people, that resume, someone might say, Traci, we need your resume for, maybe a potential board member or, maybe an award or something like that. I'm thinking 1 page, because I'm going to really just tell you my most important things on that 1 page. 2 pages I'm fine with, but I think that it's a good reminder that when you start removing old things, when it's old, right? Like it's old news. It's not things that you're currently doing. And I do like the idea of putting hobbies on there, but I try to funnel my hobbies through my activities. So my hobbies hopefully show, my hobbies include being part of the law practice division and, coaching volleyball for, one of our children. And so I think it's important to put like leadership positions by way of hobbies. And I think that you can do that in a strategic way that it talks about you and your likes, but also does it through leadership and community service. So I think that you can kind of mesh those two, and it, again, makes your resume, I think, more exciting, more detailed with less amounts of bullet points and things of that nature. And I also think I want to mention, I think it's really important to look at resumes of people that you think like they're people that you admire their careers, right? So when you're first starting out or you're in the middle of your career, wherever you are, like, are you happy again? And who do you perceive as happy? Who do you perceive as like someone's career that you think is amazing? Go look at their bio. What does their bio say that they do? Is that what, because when you're creating your bio and you're creating your career plan, this all comes together. Are you taking steps that they've taken to be where they are? Because this doesn't all just happen with a snap of a finger. We don't just wake up one day and we're the #1 litigator or this or that. What are your goals? How are you going to get there? And how are other people getting there? I'm not saying, measure yourself against others, but I'm saying what are other paths people have taken? And are those paths something, because a lot of people ask me, how do you get there? I don't know how to get there. And I say, well, look around. How are other people getting there? I mean, professionals put that information out there. It's really a roadmap for others to use as well if you want to look at it that way. So it's a resource that I say we should all be using. And I encourage our associates all the time to look at, a top litigator in New York or New Jersey, or, somewhere outside of our practice area and outside of our state, just so that they can see what other people are doing. And I think it's pretty inspirational.
I think another thing that can be really helpful, though, is going back to your long-term goals. So I recently saw on LinkedIn that someone I worked with a few years ago just got a job in what we had defined as her dream company. And I texted her and we were going back and forth. At the point that I worked with her a few years ago, she was in a law firm that was going through a lot of chaos and she lost her job. The firm hired me to work with her. What she really wanted to do was work in-house for a digital payment company. And she had her eye on a particular one. And I helped her do some networking and gather the information that actually she was only in her second year of practice, that it would be very hard / impossible to go in-house with only 2 years of experience. So we put together a resume that spotlighted the things that she had done that would be of greatest interest to a digital payments firm or practice. And in pretty short order, helped her get a job with another law firm. And she was able to parlay that into doing more and more digital payment work. And eventually she's in her job, but paying attention to what's your goal. There's nothing that says that even if you spent 80% of your time on general corporate practice and only 20% on payments, that means that your accomplishments in your resume need to be 80% this and only 20% that. You're building a case with your resume. So looking hard at your goals and building a case that best supports your goals is part of creating an effective resume.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I would just say, to close out this slide, what do we look for in a resume? I always look for someone who's excited about being a lawyer. I look for someone who has excellent, academics. I look at someone, I look for the experience, and I really look for community service and just community intelligence. Are people connected in their community? Do they want to network? If you're going to go into private practice, that's a really important transferable skill. So I look for people that are motivated, have a great attitude, and that their resume is really, they've taken time on their resume because they know that is their first step inside as an introduction. So I think it's really important to spend time on your resume, get it reviewed often, keep it updated, and let your personality shine through. Show people that you're not just becoming a lawyer because you're becoming a lawyer, you're becoming a lawyer because you really want to be a phenomenal lawyer and you think that you can bring value to the firm.
And I think that's a great way to transition to the next topic we're talking about, effective networking. So a little bit about networking 101.
Well, this is probably my favorite topic, and we do want to leave time for questions. So Shelley and I will keep this brief, but also really exciting. So networking, like I just used the term transferable skills, networking into a job, networking in your community to get clients, to get referral sources, this is all one big transferable skill. And I always start with asking myself, who am I? And what do I want people to know about me? What do I want to be known for? And as a lawyer, we always, in our firm, start with, we want to be known as someone that can help you solve your problems, right? You start pretty big, and then you funnel it in throughout your career. But I want to be known as someone that people can trust, that they can come to with their issues. And I'm a solution-oriented problem solver. That's what lawyers do. And so that's what I'm always looking at. And I think anytime we're networking, you're building your professional reputation, and people will tell you over and over again, you can lose your reputation, you can ruin your reputation in one day, but it takes years to build that credibility of professionalism. And I am very, very excited about that, but also something makes me just really want to talk about that for a second, because we all have bad days, and that's okay. And it's realizing when you're not in the right mood or the right place to be networking. So networking should be fun. Networking, you should be getting something out of it as much as you're giving into it. And I am okay 100% with leaning out of something that you're not connecting with. So I've hired numerous people over the years because I've done community service projects with them, or I've spoken on panels with them and gotten to know them, or I've met them through the ABA. And when people bring their best self to those opportunities, that's who I get to see. when someone has a bad day and they bring maybe not their best self, that was maybe your opportunity to make to make an impression on someone. So I just think it's really important to choose the networking things that you're doing that mean something to you and do them well, because that is an opportunity every single time you're interacting with someone.
And I also think that really focusing on more regularly on what you can give or can contribute, and not as much on what you can get, is a good mindset for networking. And for, good networking is really relationship building, and relationships are reciprocal. So I think to lead with that, especially, I think for everyone, but for someone who's shy, if you can contribute something to someone, it makes it less difficult to pick up a phone, for example, and offer something than it is to pick up a phone and ask for something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love this next slide as well. So best networking source, I think it depends on your practice area. So I think you need to look around and think about what kind of clients are you looking to get, whether they're, are you business to business? Are you looking for plaintiffs? Are you looking for defendants? It just really depends. And I think you need to look big and then start to focus. And I think LinkedIn is very valuable in the sense of it is all of your connections in one place. And I think that it's a nice way to communicate with people. And I think that it's a very professional way to communicate with people. I think one of the best ways to follow up after meeting someone for the first time is to link in. So I'm a big fan. What about you, Shelley?
I also think, even when going way back when LinkedIn was brand new, I was encouraging my clients to get LinkedIn. I think it's very valuable. The thing I would say is over time, I'm probably like everyone else, I get millions of LinkedIn invitations. And, I think that can water down your network if people are wanting to link in and you've got tons of people that you don't know or barely know. It can also water down the network. But on the other hand, I think it's an invaluable resource, and you can use it to try to get to people, but then customize your approach to them and look for ways you can help.
And what have been some success? Oh, I'm sorry, Tracy. I was just
no, go ahead.
I was just going to move on and kind of say, what have been successful ways that you have networked to build a book of business or to develop clients?
Yeah, and that's where I was going to. So great minds. I think the most successful ways, this goes with like the second or the next bullet point as well. The biggest no-no for me is not having fun, not enjoying it. So the most successful ways are when I'm having a good time and when it feels authentic, when it feels like it's, I'm there for a reason and I'm doing something that matters to me. And, it's more like a double benefit, right? Like I enjoy it and I'm getting something out of it. So I think it's important to try things out. I think it's important to let yourself explore, and then you start to find pockets of things that, definitely are important to you and are rewarding to you. And, I think one of my most successful marketing has been just getting to know my peers. So, starting with the local bar, I was the president of Young Lawyers in Portland, a decade ago. And some of those folks that I met and served on that board with, everyone moves different places and they do different things in life. And a lot of my friends that were at different firms, a lot of them have gone out on their own. They've taken different career paths. They've gone in-house. I get more referrals from my own colleagues than I do from anywhere else. So I think staying in touch with people from law school, making a genuine, plan to connect with people and make it feel, exciting and natural. All of your friends become, they become decision makers at some point. So I think it's important to just connect with people and keep it really meaningful. And you definitely, I think that for referrals, that's important, but obtaining employment, same thing. I know about jobs through my colleagues and contacts before they, hit a job board of something of that nature. So you want people to be thinking of you, and, you want to be putting it out there. Also, I'm not currently looking for another position. I absolutely love my job, but I am a conduit for a lot of people. They'll email me and say, Tracy, do you know someone? And obviously that's not just happening to me. So knowing that your colleagues and your friends are getting those emails, do you know someone who would like to do this? If you are looking for a job, it's important to let people know what you want to do. And it's important to update them regularly and keep them in the loop so when things come across their desk, they think of you.
I also think when people are looking for a job, I mean, the research shows really clearly that at least 70 to 80% of new jobs come through your network. It's not through search firms, it's not through ads, it's through your network. And so LinkedIn is an invaluable resource for getting to your network and using your contacts to gather information and maybe introductions to other people. I've literally had people who have networked their way to someone who could take their resume and physically put it on the desk of a person who was hiring and accompanying it with an endorsement of this person. And that has led to jobs for more than one person that I worked with. So it can be a great resource for that as well. Can I say something about my biggest no-no in networking is not thinking of reciprocity. And I've seen this a lot, especially with people early in their careers who I think, oh, well, there's nothing I could do for someone else. So I'm just gonna, ask them to help me, but I'm not gonna try and, offer anything to them. And I think that is a huge mistake. I mean, speaking as someone who's older, I could always use technical. You're probably more technically savvy than I am, but even if there's nothing you can offer to make the ask, to say, is there some way I can reciprocate? I think is a really, really critical. I have to tell you, I had someone I've never met who she was the wife of someone I bought a house from. And she got in touch with me and said, will you mentor me? I don't know her. It was just do this for me. And it just was, I thought, well, on the one hand, she's pretty, brave, but I also thought, wow, that's not the way to go about this.
I also think that for shy people, I think it's okay to be shy, and I would own that. And I would say, I'm always looking personally at my biggest strengths and what my perceived weaknesses are. And if a perceived weakness of yours is that you're shy, I would say create an environment where you can be yourself. So maybe you network with a friend. It doesn't even have to be another lawyer, someone else in professional services. You find a network of people that you feel comfortable around. You start small. Maybe when you go to events, if that is how you're going to network again someday, you have very specific goals. So maybe you're going and it's super, it's terrifying, which I understand. When I did not know a single person in Portland when I became a lawyer. I didn't know a lawyer. Nobody in my family was a lawyer, and I started small. I am a little bit outgoing, I would say, but I made myself goals because I was definitely a little fish in a big pond. So I would say, okay, I'm going to this event. I know that there's going to be these 3 people here, and I'm going to walk in, I'm going to find them, I'm going to have a conversation. And if at that point I'm done, I'll leave, right? I'm not going to force myself to stay and make small talk with people that I don't know, even though I actually really ended up enjoying that. I was very, very nervous at first. And so giving myself little ways out, okay, I'm going to do this, and then to me that will be a success. And if I want to stay, then that's fine. That's just a small example, but I think creating an environment where you feel comfortable, and maybe you go with someone as their guest and they introduce you to people. That's one of my favorite ways to mentor, to be honest, is to take folks that don't know anybody and introduce them to people, right? And then we'll stop after we talk to every person and we'll write down their name, and we'll make sure that, so there's follow-up later, it was great to meet you. I'm going to link in with you. It's about helping other people too. So I'd say, if you're watching this webinar and you're not a shy person, but you know someone who might be shy, reach out to them and see if they want to, this is a great community, and lawyers are amazing people. And the more that we, network together and help, to Shelley's point, I would rather reach out to someone and say, can I help, would you like to come to this event with me and sit at the Barran Liebman table so I can introduce you to people, as opposed to emailing someone and say, hey, can I go with you? So I think it's a two-way street. And I think that it's just important to, figure out what type of person you are and how you can make yourself feel most comfortable.
So we do have some questions that are coming in. So now may be a good time to start answering those and see if there's any additional questions that come. Somebody asked, what if your law firm doesn't support a career plan because they feel challenged and you have partners or other attorneys who don't support you? How do you handle that?
I will say that, you know, even if your firm doesn't support it, it isn't as progressive as Traci's firm is. I think this can be a document that you use to keep yourself on track, to keep making steps in the direction you want. I have seen so many lawyers who, like, for example, went into law because they wanted to change the world. They joined a firm, the firm had a need in their corporate practice, and they just ended up getting swept along. And 10 years later, they're still doing corporate work and they're miserable and they want to make a change. And a career plan is a way to help you keep moving in the direction you want to go. So you're in the corporate practice, maybe you volunteered to do something on a particular piece of litigation, or you work on a task force, you volunteer for a task force in the firm that has some connection or has a number of prominent litigators in the firm, and it gives you a chance to develop relationships with them.
I think that's a great answer. I would also say to this question, which is a great question, by the way, it's okay. Every firm is different. And if this isn't something that your firm currently supports, you can be a change agent if you'd like. Or I would say this is another great example of using your personal, your personal friends or colleagues in professional services or other lawyers. I've had a lot of friends reach out and say, hey, Trace, obviously, you're someone who enjoys this. Would you sit down with me and help me? And, they don't work at my firm. I'm doing it because I'm friends with them. I'm happy to talk to people about this. And so reach out to people that, you think enjoy this, people that, you can trust. I think that it's okay. It's actually more than okay to create a network of people that want to do career plans that aren't internal. It's totally okay. It takes, like Shelly said earlier, it takes a little bit of extra effort because, I literally put calendar invites on people's calendars internally at my office and say, hey, we're going to meet and talk about this, and it's going to be exciting. But you can be as intentional with people that you don't work with. And I think that it's a really good way to ensure that you're doing it and holding yourself accountable. And again, it can be really fun.
Do you think there's a benefit to working on career plans with those who aren't attorneys and are other fields, whether it's business or finance or things of that nature?
I do.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the process is still the same, although you may get more practical benefit from talking to people in your field, but still that whole idea of sort of peer coaching and looking for ways to make progress, that's not limited to lawyers.
Yeah, professional services marketing is pretty similar in a lot of ways. So I have friends that do professional services marketing with accounting and doctors and architects and lawyers. So, I mean, there are a lot of similarities. So I would say absolutely, Cara, great question.
And there's another question that came in with regards to resumes. What's the impact of leaving dates off of a resume?
I think you don't want to do it. I mean, I will tell you, I've been a search consultant, a selection consultant. I've done outplacement. And in all those cases, I've been a hiring manager. You want to know if someone is leaving off dates, it raises a question, why are they doing that? And oftentimes it's people who are older. That's not going to be an issue for you, for most of you, but they're doing it so that they can make it seem like they're younger than they are. And I keep saying to people, yeah, but when you walk into that interview or a Zoom interview and you're not 25, you're 45, people are going to feel snookered. They're going to feel like, why were you doing that? I think it's really important to have dates so you can show them you weren't in prison or anything like that.
And kind of to touch base on that, my apologies, Traci, I just wanted to kind of ask, if you're at a position for a short period of time, which is why maybe some people are trying to leave off dates, is there a way to address those questions?
Well, if you're there for less than a year, it is conceivable that you could leave it off altogether, or you could put a couple of positions together in the same time. But, I mean, the other thing I would say is that if you're worried that you were only with a firm for 6 months, I think, I mean, in general, I'm a believer in honesty is the best policy. Without trashing the other firm, you could say, as I actually, the woman that I mentioned who went to her digital payments, dream job and had been placed by her firm, I advised her when I was coaching her on the interview, I said, just say I had 6 different managing partners in 3 offices in 6 months. And I said, you don't have to do, and you can say, so there was a lot going on in the firm. You're not trashing them, you're just stating the facts. But someone hearing that is going to put 2 and 2 together. And all of us make mistakes. All of us take things that don't work out. There's no shame in it. If you have, on the other hand, a whole series of things that are 6 months, 3 to 6 months, then I'd be asking myself some serious questions about what am I doing wrong here? What can I learn from this?
Yeah, and I would just
Listen,
build on
what
that
do
a
you
little.
think?
Yeah, I think that's really good information. I would also say I'm okay with just saying years, right? So like a lot of people are putting like January to, whatever, March, da 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 da. If you're having some issues and there are different things going on, just put the year. It still gives me a time frame, but I don't need to know exactly what you were doing, every month. I mean, it's okay to have gaps. Those are really explainable. And I don't really think it's some of my business, especially during the past like 2 years. Resumes look really different right now, and that's okay. There have been very different opportunities. There's been less opportunities. I'm okay with it, and I think majority of my peers are okay with it also. I really think that people should give themselves a little bit of a break when they're looking at their resume. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for who are you and what do you want to do and what do you enjoy? I don't need it to be accounted for every minute what you've been doing, the past couple of years. I want to see what are your transferable skills? Do you know how to work in a law firm in any capacity? So I think it's okay to give yourself a break on the whole like timing and dates and things like that.
I actually think it's better to use years and not months anyway, because I think it's cluttered.
I agree.
Do you guys have any thoughts or advice for someone who's in their 70s, needs to get back to work, but is not living in their community and most of their contacts are outside of the United States?
This maybe not the international versus domestic, but in general, one of the things I advise people is to really use your network rigorously. So too often people think, well, I want a legal job in San Francisco, so the only people I need to talk to in my network are lawyers in the Bay Area. But in fact, people in other professions and other locations. So I would say to the person who is looking for work, but his or her contacts are outside the US, I would still be looking at their LinkedIn profiles. I'd be studying them and looking at where they might be able to make introductions for you to other people in the US or to people in companies or firms that are targets of yours. It may take a whole chain of contacts, but we know that whole research about 6 degrees of separation. I think I have seen people get all kinds of jobs with 4th order contacts, people who are former colleagues of former neighbors of someone they might not have ever met in person, but were enough to have a conversation which led to a crucial introduction or piece of information to get a job. So you can absolutely do that.
I think it also depends on the type of job you're looking to find. So if you are interested in, doing, maybe some doc review, or if you're interested in being a solo, reaching out to the bar association where you want to practice, getting on the referral list, reaching out to different listservs that you're a member. I would become a member of the local bar association. In Oregon, we have an amazing group called the Oregon Women Lawyers. And we have this phenomenal referral program and also just this very active listserv where people will just put out there who they are and what they're looking to do. So it just depends on the type of work I think you want to be connected to, but there are a lot of ways if you're not, and I think even more now, a lot of these things can be done remotely, and that's much more, common, and we have the technology to do it and people are more comfortable with it. So I would say that there are a lot of different avenues, but I would think about first, what am I trying to do, and work backwards from that.
And speaking of remote work and remote networking, when is it appropriate to ask for remote or flexible positions in a job interview?
I personally think you don't want to be asking for stuff in an interview. I think the thing is you want to make them fall in love with you. And then you have far more leverage in negotiating, possibilities. But if you come in with what are the hours going to be, I need this with a whole bunch of requirements, you're automatically a less attractive candidate. Now, the pandemic has made that somewhat less of an issue, but just on general grounds, I wouldn't start in with requirements from the get-go. I'd make my case first.
I would also say I agree, and I think that if you're looking for a flex time position or a remote position, a lot of positions are saying that now. So I would be on the lookout for jobs that are, putting that out there to start with. And I think it's okay to ask, currently what is the firm, if it's a law firm, currently what is, how is the law firm working hybrid, what are the plans? So I think you can inquire about what's going on, but being pretty like, hey, I want to work from home forever. If that's your goal, that's awesome. But I would look for those opportunities and maybe not put it out there like that, but you can always inquire about how the firm or the company is currently handling the situation.
Can I respond to Yolanda's question about age proofing? I think it's a really great question, Yolanda, and I'll tell you, I literally had, during the dot-com boom, I actually had, I think she was 34-year-old attorney who was told by a Silicon Valley employer that she was too old. I mean, never mind that it was illegal to do that. I mean, it just gives you a sense. I would say to you, the same thing I would say to anyone. I think whatever your age, your greatest currency is in coming up with a set of quantified, hard-hitting accomplishments that will sell you. And what you want to do, the older you get, it's less about, if you're 45, you're 45, but what you want to be able to show with your accomplishments is that you have the kind of seasoning and record of accomplishment that someone who's 30 hasn't had the time or the ability to create. So I would say, again, look to make your strongest case with accomplishments.
Thank you. And I think with that, we filled our time. We're out of time here. I want to thank everybody for attending today. Thank our panelists, Traci Ray and Rachelle Shelley Canter. Thank you, Cara, for being a great co-moderator with me. Everybody have a great evening. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Hi.